The Algorithm of the Abyss, Decoding the Dark Human Code. Introduction: The Ghost in the Machine. The concept of the dark human code is a metaphor for the inherent, often repressed and destructive subroutines running within the human psyche. It is the architectural blueprint of our capacity for malevolence, selfishness, aggression, and deceit. For centuries, theologians called it original sin. Philosophers named it the state of nature. Psychoanalysts labeled it the id, or the shadow. Today, in the era of computational metaphors, we view it as a hardwired source code, a legacy program from our evolutionary history that conflicts with our modern moral operating systems. To understand the dark human code is to stare into the abyss of human nature, not with fear, but with the analytical precision of a surgeon. It requires us to ask, is this darkness a glitch, a corruption of a noble being? Or is it a feature, a necessary survival mechanism that has outlived its context? This treatise explores the philosophical logic and psychological mechanics of this dark code, tracing its execution from the primal savannah to the digital age. Part 1. The Philosophical Architecture. 1. The Hobbesian Trap. Homo homini lupus. The philosophical investigation into human darkness begins with the question of our default state. In the 17th century, Thomas Hobbes provided the bleakest assessment in his seminal work, Leviathan. Hobbes argued that the natural condition of mankind is a war of all against all. He famously posited Homo homini lupus. Man is a wolf to man. In the Hobbesian view, the dark human code is not an anomaly. It is the only code. Without the artificial constraints of society, law, and a Leviathan, a powerful sovereign, to enforce order, human life is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. The philosophical implication: darkness is fundamental. Altruism and morality are merely patches installed later to prevent the system from crashing. The code logic. The prime directive is self-preservation at the expense of others. There is no morality in nature, only leverage. 2. Nietzsche and the integration of the beast. Friedrich Nietzsche offered a more complex, less moralistic view of this darkness. He critiqued the Christian dichotomy of good versus evil, suggesting that what we call darkness, aggression, dominance, pride, are actually expressions of the will to power, the fundamental drive of all life. For Nietzsche, the dark human code becomes dangerous only when it is repressed and turns into resentment. He argued that civilized man is a sick animal because he has domesticated himself, turning his aggressive instincts inward, resulting in guilt and self-hatred. He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. Friedrich Nietzsche, the Nietzschean Übermensch, Overman, does not delete the dark code, he masters it. He sublimates these drives into creativity and vitality. Moving into the 20th century, the philosophy of darkness shifted from the innate nature of man to the structure of systems. Hannah Arendt, witnessing the trial of Adolf Eichmann, coined the banality of evil. She observed that the darkest human actions often do not arise from a sadistic monster, but from ordinary individuals simply following the code of the bureaucracy around them. This suggests a terrifying fluidity to the dark human code. It can be executed by anyone who stops thinking critically. It is not just active malice, it is the passive failure to engage the moral imagination. Part 2. The Psychological Source Code. Sigmund Freud provided the first system architecture of the human mind. At the root, he placed the id, the reservoir of our primitive impulses. The id operates on the pleasure principle, demanding immediate gratification for sex and aggression, indifferent to reality or morality. Later, traumatized by the carnage of World War I, Freud introduced the concept of thanatos, the death drive. He argued that alongside eros, the drive for life and connection, Humans possess an innate biological drive toward destruction and a return to the inorganic state. The code: destroy to reduce tension. The conflict: civilization is essentially a mechanism to suppress the id, which results in the discontent of society. We are unhappy because our source code demands things that our social reality forbids. Carl Jung, Freud's contemporary, expanded this into the concept of the shadow. The shadow consists of everything the conscious ego refuses to acknowledge about itself. It is not just evil, it is the unlived life, the rage, the sexual desires, the selfishness, but also the creative chaos that we repress to fit in. Jung's crucial insight was that what you resist persists. If you ignore the dark human code, it runs in the background as a demon process, seizing control when you are stressed, drunk, or in a mob. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Carl Jung. Psychologically, the nice guy who suddenly snaps is a victim of an unintegrated shadow. The code was not deleted, it simply compiled an error until the system crashed. Modern evolutionary psychology reframes the dark code as a survival strategy. Richard Dawkins' The Selfish Gene suggests that we are survival machines built by genes that only care about replication. Tribalism. We are hardwired to favor the in-group and dehumanize the out-group. This was a feature for small tribes competing for resources. It is a bug in a globalized nuclear world. The dark tetrad. Psychologists have identified a cluster of personality traits that represent the dark code in its purest form: narcissism, grandiosity, and lack of empathy; Machiavellianism, manipulation and strategic exploitation; psychopathy, impulsivity and lack of remorse; sadism, enjoyment of inflicting pain. Research suggests these traits are frequency-dependent. In a society of cooperators, a cheater running the dark code thrives. If everyone cheats, society collapses. Therefore, nature preserves a small percentage of humans running the dark code, because in dire situations, ruthlessness can save the tribe. Part 3. The situational trigger, the Lucifer effect. If the dark code is pre-installed, what triggers the execute command? Social psychologist Philip Zimbardo, Stanford Prison Experiment, and Stanley Milgram, Obedience Experiments, proved that the environment can override individual morality. This is known as the Lucifer effect. De-individuation. When people are anonymous, masked, uniformed, or online, the moral subroutines are suspended. Diffusion of responsibility. I was just following orders, or everyone else was doing it. The psychology here is terrifying. The dark code is not limited to sociopaths. It is a dormant program in everyone, activated by authority, anonymity, and fear. Part 4. The digital manifestation, the code in the cloud. In the 21st century, the dark human code has found a new host, the Internet. We are witnessing the digital disinhibition effect, algorithmic radicalization. Social media algorithms are designed to maximize engagement. Since the human brain pays more attention to threat and outrage, the negativity bias, algorithms systematically amplify the dark code. Anger travels faster than joy. Gamified cruelty, trolling, doxing, and cyberbullying are the dark code turned into a game. The screen creates a dissociative barrier. We do not see the pain of the victim, bypassing our biological empathy triggers, mirror neurons. We have built a digital infrastructure that incentivizes the worst parts of our psychological history. Part V, synthesis and transcendence, rewriting the algorithm. If the dark human code is innate, are we doomed? Both philosophy and psychology suggest a way out, but it is not through denial. Integration, Jungian approach. We must acknowledge the capacity for evil within us. A harmless man is not a good man. A good man is a dangerous man who has his danger under voluntary control. Jordan Peterson. Stoicism and cognitive control. Philosophy teaches us that while we cannot control the impulses, the initial code execution, we can control the assent, the decision to act. This is the gap between stimulus and response where human freedom lies. Neuroplasticity. We can literally rewire our brains. Practices like mindfulness, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and exposure therapy help us recognize the dark code triggers and reroute the neural pathways toward constructive action. Conclusion. The dark human code is not a foreign virus. It is the bedrock of our operating system. It contains the aggression that protects our children, the ambition that builds cities, and the chaos that fuels art. However, it also contains the capacity for genocide and sadism. The philosophical and psychological task of the modern human is not to purify ourselves of darkness, which leads to totalitarianism and repression. The task is to become a proficient coder of one's own psyche, to understand the legacy code, patch the vulnerabilities, and choose every day which program to run.